So I've already done a video on Joe Joyce versus Filip Hrgovic, in as much as I've given my 2 cents on the fight. I've done a bit of a preview on the undercard. And yeah, just given my 2 cents on who I think will win and how I think both guys will go about winning. So this is not a addendum or anything like that, or a follow-up. My pick is still Filip Hrgovic to win the fight, probably on points, maybe late stoppage. The 10-round distance certainly favours Hrgovic more than it favours Joyce. Not that Hrgovic has bad stamina, but I think if he does, sell out a little bit early on and throw a little bit too much, he's not having to worry about the extra 9 minutes, the end of the 10th, the 11th, or the extra 6 minutes really. But you know what I mean. So it's not really a video on that. It's something I've noticed a lot of people have been saying about Joe Joyce, even when it was Dylan White, even really when it was Derek Chisora he was fighting, going back last year, is that a lot of people have been remarking and commenting on Joe Joyce, his speech, and how he's been looking in the build-up, in particular for this fight. Bear in mind, even when it was Dylan White was the opponent, a lot of people have been saying that they're actually quite worried about Joe Joyce, and that they feel as though maybe he needs to knock it on the head, win or lose, or maybe not even. Maybe that's the wrong word, knock anything on the head, but you know what I mean. And listen, I've said it before on this channel about just in general. I was on Boxing Scene, and Luis Alberto Lopez, I just happened to be looking through articles on Boxing Scene, and to my horror, I seen that he fought the weekend and won. And you'd be saying, gee, what do you mean to your horror? The man suffered a bleed on the brain. Now, maybe it was minor, but how the hell are you letting someone in general who suffered that? I know it was in Mexico, I think it was in Mexico, but why in God's name would you? How? That's a recipe for disaster, and thank God he was okay, from that and on fight night. But you shouldn't let him anywhere. You shouldn't even be sparring, for God's sake. Jesus, Nick Blackwell, remember him? He got out of it pretty much scot-free first time around with Chris Eubank Jr., and he went and sparred, and that exacerbated the issue. Obviously, he's still fine, he's okay, but he's not. Listen to him on, I think it was a GMB, post Eubank, like normal. Now, he is still normal, like he's not, in a bad way per se, but he's not as coherent as he once was, and that's largely down to what he did. So with something like that, this shouldn't be anywhere near a ring. When I look at someone like a Derek Chisora, and I hear quite a noticeable deterioration in his speech over the last couple of years, I say, well, yeah, it's nice to say you're going out with a win, or you're going out with a world title shot, and this, that, and the other, but realistically, should you really be even doing that? Realistically, because of given the fact that, you're not sounding the best. It is sounding a bit forced, a bit slurred, and you don't want to be saying that. With Joe Joyce, on the other hand, it's a weird one for me, because I've been around Joe Joyce a couple of times. In fact, people want to talk about Joe Joyce, that they're saying his speech sounds a little bit slurred, which, again, I'll touch on that in a sec, but they also want to talk about that stare and that pause that you get with Joe Joyce, which, for those who don't know, CTE, I think the abbreviation, the medical term is chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or the last word is quite a long word, but it's essentially due to damage in the head, damage in the brain. You saw back in the day, it very much so came to light during the Chris Benoit tragedy. If you don't know what that is, Chris Benoit was a famous professional wrestler from Canada. He was very, very rough and rugged. He was regarded as one of the greatest technical wrestlers of all time, but he put his body on the line. Chair shots to the head, unprotected, and whatever you want to say about wrestling being fake, choreographed, they know how to fall, chair shots are real. His brain was pretty much turned to mush by the time they done the autopsy, because he obviously did something to his family and then himself. You kind of know what I'm alluding to with that one. And that was when people kind of started saying, oh wow, what's going on here, head injuries of American footballers, gridiron, I think is what it's actually called, because we call obviously football over here, soccer, real football. You only use your feet, you don't use your hands. But we started to learn more about it, and you see some of the signs of people who have it. They have that stare into space. They do. You ask them a question, it's a real, oh yeah, lights are on, no one's home sort of thing. Some people have told me in the comment section that they feel like it's that with Joe Joyce. I've spoken to people who've been around Joe Joyce, and they've said, well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. Now, for me, I've been around Joe Joyce. I interviewed Joe Joyce nearly 3 years ago now. And I want you to have a listen to this. This was June of 22. And for me, he sounds pretty much no different, and you're still getting those pauses with Joe Joyce. It's about 30 seconds. Have a listen on the screen.
What was it? Oh yeah, Shane McGuigan as well. I was a bit fired up. Yeah. And then I gave my opinion on both of them, and I speaking my mind on Twitter, and like I'm calling these guys out.
Is this a new Joe Joyce? A new fiery Joe Joyce?
Well, when you can't take this shit no more. Then I just want to instead of being quiet and that, I want to give you my opinions and let the people know what I think.
That's perfect.
Now again, that was 22. That was the very end of June in 2022. We were up in Wembley. That was in the run up to his fight. That was actually the press conference for his fight with Christian Hammer. It was all done up in Wembley, up in northwest London. And for me, I don't really see much of a difference, to be honest with you, in Joe Joyce in terms of his speech. You can see he was mentioning Shane McGuigan. Shane McGuigan was saying at the time Joe Joyce wouldn't last around with Anthony Joshua, and I remember I brought that up to Joe Joyce, and he was like, "Who was that?" It was Shane McGuigan. That's 3 years ago. So I wouldn't necessarily say I think it's the same with Joe Joyce. Having said that, there are people who are around him who say, actually, it's not great. And regardless of the fact, I think Joe Joyce, looking at how he is in the ring, I think that he might just be ahead of the game in terms of leaving the sport without any serious damage. Having said that, a fight like Filip Hrgovic the weekend, where Joe Joyce over the last couple of years has neglected to use his feet, his jab, he could end up with some damage coming off the back of this fight. He really could. So I think with Joe Joyce, it's more, the purpose of this video is more of I think Joe Joyce is on his way out of the sport. And I think that for his own sake, because I don't think it's gone necessarily bad now. Some people do. But if he carries on, how is it going to go? Not particularly well. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. What do you think? Do you think that I'm looking at this saying, it doesn't sound that bad? Do you agree? Or do you actually think that, no, you're not looking hard enough? If you really look, you're really going to notice it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I hope you enjoyed the video. I could be speaking very different come the weekend. Who knows in terms of how he sounds and stuff like that. But to me, he sounds same as always, truth be told. The kind of pause and the, yeah, that's always kind of been his thing, has it not? But let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I hope you enjoyed the video. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, as always, if you haven't already. And people, until next time, I hope you enjoyed it. Peace.